This is what I mean when you find this stuff out, like this is effed up.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the WIT podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Hernholm. And 15 years ago, I left the classroom to start the nonprofit WIT Whatever It Takes. But I missed the classroom. And that's why we've created the WIT podcast. Every week, we bring you somebody that you can learn from. You'll hear about their successes and setbacks, their trials and triumphs. And as a result, you'll be equipped and empowered to do WIT in your life. This week's guest is Alex Clark, and in this episode, we tackle topics like the food system, the school system, and what's going on with birth control. I know you're going to learn a lot from this episode if you stay open and willing to listen to what she has to say. So you know the deal. At the WIT podcast, it's not sit back and relax. It's get out those notebooks, get out your phone, get ready to take some notes, get some information, and be ready to do WIT. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the WIT podcast. This is kind of fun because we have a podcaster, a host of one of my favorite podcasts on this show today, and she gets to be in the hot interview seat. So that's kind of fun. Alex Clark, welcome to the WIT podcast.
I'm never usually in this position. I'm usually in your spot. So this is unique. It's unique. I'm not a guest a lot. I'm usually just the host.
Well, we are honored. Like I said to you before we jumped on to record, there's a new audience out there for you that needs to hear what you have to say. And I will say this, and I don't usually say this. If you have not listened to Alex Clark on the Spillover, you may pause this and you may go listen to one of her episodes, and then you may come back and listen and watch this one, because I really just believe so much in what she's putting out into the world. So let's jump in. I have a very important question to ask you, which is, what do you think Alex Clark, who was on 99.7, would think of Alex Clark today?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think I would have thought there was no way that I would be in this field, because I mean, I'm essentially, my podcast is really not overtly political, but it is in the conservative movement technically. Like technically I do work in politics, and I think that would have been extremely shocking to me, not because I wasn't conservative, but just because I would have felt like I couldn't do that. Like, I don't have the credentials to do that. I would never be able to make it in that space or be respected in that space. So that would be shocking to me. And then 99.7 Alex from Louisville, which is where I started, that Alex would just absolutely laugh you out of the room if you told her I was giving up chicken nuggets, that I was going to go on this like entire health journey, and that was going to be a huge part of my brand. That would be so shocking and jarring to me, old me.
I mean, Alex, I think that's even shocking to like 2 years ago version, because I've been following you for a long time when you were like chicken nuggets queen, and your whole health journey. I mean, let's just stay there for a minute and chat about that, because like I said to you before we jumped on, caring about your body and your home and what you spend your time doing is not political. and the way that Alex will educate you and inform you by taking you on her journey, which I think is really what you've done, Alex, because I've been with you since you were just eating chicken nuggets, and now I can't imagine that's what you eat for dinner anymore.
Yeah, last night I had two salmon fillets, sockeye salmon fillets from Good Ranchers, and I had asparagus, and that's it. People like, you know what really like absolutely ticks me off is somebody was like, well, Alex isn't, I never see her posting about cooking, so I think she just like makes it up, this healthy eating thing. I'm like, because it's not, because it's simple, it's just real whole ingredients. I don't think that's exciting for me to post that I'm having salmon and asparagus, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's exciting, so I don't post it. But yeah, the thing is that your health, it shouldn't be political.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't at all. Like, that shouldn't be controversial or have any political ties. Unfortunately, today in America, it is somehow it is political, because the government has made it that way. And it's disgusting and it's horrible. and it's at the expense of everybody's health. And so that was really what radicalized me, because you're right, even a couple years ago, 2 years ago, I wasn't doing this. So this really is, it's about exactly a year and a half, 2 years now that I've totally changed my tune on all of this. It wasn't even that. I was just really willfully ignorant on food in America. And I just thought, I'm thin, first of all. I mean, I'll admit this. Because I've been thin my whole life, we are taught to think that automatically means health. And so I just was like, oh, well, I'm fine. I have no issues. Well, I just got my hormones tested last week. Now I know full blown, which I'm going to be revealing on my podcast this week. I know now that that is completely false, and I have a lot of issues. So I took that for granted, and just was eating whatever I wanted because I wasn't gaining weight. And then I realized during the pandemic how so many different things the government lies to us about, like all these other huge industries, right? Like media and tech and big pharma. All of these things I started realizing they were lies. And then I realized that one of the other bigs that nobody ever talks about is big food. And I started looking into that, like, well, is that really a thing? Because I found out that there was only 5 major food companies in America that control everything we eat. And I thought, well, that's suspicious. That's weird. So then I started looking into that. And see, the thing is that once your eyes are opened, as a conservative, which I am, once your eyes are open to government corruption and the things that they withhold from the public in order to control them and all these other facets of life, you can't deny going down the food rabbit hole. And that's also because it totally connects to pharma. They need us eating the stuff that's making us sick so that they can prescribe the antidote, right? The solution, which it's not. I mean, we're seeing that now with Ozempic. So it all ties together. And then I was like, man, I cannot believe how ignorant I've been at the detriment of my own health, which I'm now seeing, just because I just wanted to eat what I wanted to eat. And I just didn't want to know, because if I knew, then that would require me to make uncomfortable changes, right? And we're all like this in different areas, whether it's abortion or, I mean, anything else. There are different things. It's like, well, I just don't want to know. I don't want to hear it. Don't talk to me. I'm leaving the room. I'm walking out of the conversation, because if I hear the truth, what will that require me to have to change? And so that's the story that happened to me.
I know, and I'm thinking about the person right now who's listening. You know what just came up for you in your mind about the thing that you've been not listening to. Like the person who's watching right now, we all have that thing that that's been right here, it kind of buzzing in your ear, like a topic that you've just been pushing away and pushing away. Pay attention to that. And I even think about the people right now that are going, conservative, I'm not going to listen to a conservative. Don't do that. Keep listening. Like, ask yourself, why am I all of a sudden going to turn away from listening to somebody who's talking about the value of eating whole foods? Like that, and taking care of yourself and not wanting you to be over medicated. Like that is
because here's the thing, that used to be a very, very liberal lifestyle to be into eating organic, rejecting GMOs. It was conservatives. It was conservatives who made fun of Michelle Obama when she was first lady for her initiative on cutting back on processed food in our school lunches. Well, see, what happened was, at first, Michelle Obama was actually right. She was actually right in that we needed to change our school lunches. But what happened was, big food stepped in. So if you remember the very, very beginning of the Let's Move initiative, I believe that's what it was called, but the very beginning of Michelle Obama's food initiative in our public schools was about changing the food itself and saying there's something wrong. We're feeding our kids poison. Well, big food stepped in and said, oh no, you're not going to demonize us. We're going to change this now. Let's Move became literally about exercise. And so the problem is, you had an entire generation of millennial kids who were struggling with obesity because of the food they were eating, primarily at their schools, which she was right. She tried to get them to change it. Then they stepped in and said, no way, we're going to take away money. We're going to do all this, not donate to campaigns or whatever they were doing, just everything, from a political standpoint. They were pissed that she was drawing attention to this. And they said, you're going to change now to making it about exercise. And so you had all of these kids who were being told, shouted at from the rooftops from every single entity in pop culture, in media, from their teachers, from their health professionals, that you are fat because you don't exercise enough. But the problem is that when you tell people that it's just exercise, you just need to run, but you're not fueling your body with the food that it needs. The food that you're putting in your body is literally depleting you from all of the essential nutrients and vitamins so that you can move well and then keep the weight off. Because if you're only focusing on exercise and not actually changing the diet, and by the way, diet doesn't mean like you can't eat anything fun. I eat everything fun. It's just, is it made with real whole ingredients, So anyway, but those kids then have a lifetime of shame and all of these problems because they're like, well, I just don't understand. I'm going for a walk every day. Why can't I keep the weight off? But then their dinner was Hot Pockets and soda. And there's a great documentary that described all of this, including what happened to Michelle Obama and why she pivoted that campaign. It's called Fed Up. And it's not a conservative documentary at all, but just talking about how even people on that side, they get that pressure. These groups like big tech, big pharma, big food, they control everything. They control people on the left and the right. And it's very, very eye-opening to be like, I just want to be awake to all of it.
I mean, when you're talking about this, it's reminding me, I used to be a school teacher. I was an elementary school teacher for a little bit until I finally left because they don't care about the kids as much as I thought public schools cared about kids. But two things that I would get in trouble for would be in the cafeteria, because I was working in Title I schools, so lower income schools. And so most people were taking the school lunch. And my thing that I used to get in trouble for, I didn't care, was I would, with all my kids, I'd be behind them and I would say, put color on your plate, put color on your plate, put color on your plate. No beige, it can't be all beige.
All the school lunches are just beige.
Because they're just beige. And then they wouldn't go to the salad bar. And I was like, we're going, like, you got to put color on your plate. And yeah, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to tell a kid what to eat. But I was thinking, that's my job. If I'm responsible for a child for this many hours of the day, I'm going to educate them on different ways to do this. But I get in trouble for that. And I also, PE was cut from public schools, like one of the first things to go. And I would teach PE because there was no PE teacher. And I would get in trouble for taking them out of the classroom to go move. Oh. It's like, they need to move in order to learn better.
So listen to this.
Yeah, to go.
I just found out a couple days ago. There is a panel that decides what is allowed on the school lunches. Okay. They meet every several years. I can't remember the name now, but this panel, they decide nationwide what our kids eat. This panel, almost everyone on the panel is paid for by the company who makes Ozempic and Wegovy, the weight loss drugs.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. Now, what happened in October of 2023? In October of 2023, we found out that Ozempic is doing trials to use that drug on kids as young as 6 years old.
Yes.
So the plan is, what I'm telling you, is that in the next several years, this is going to be the next absolute massive health issue that we deal with as American citizens is the Ozempic thing, because what we're doing is we're training these kids. They're going to say they already said that they said pizza was a vegetable. So they're setting up to make sure that these kids are only eating processed food to make them sicker than ever, so they can say, oh, your kid now is struggling with obesity. We're going to give them Ozempic, of course, a lifetime of Ozempic for obesity. You're talking about, you are purposefully creating all of these chronic illnesses that then your kid is going to have other pharmaceutical drugs to treat for the rest of their life. We are going to see people set up to be patients for life on this system like we've never seen before, starting next year when this group meets, I believe in March 2025. So it's very, very disturbing and it's very scary. And I'm going to be interviewing somebody on my podcast, The Spillover, about this very soon, who is sounding the alarms all about this. But this is what I mean when you find this stuff out. Like, you don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat to say this is effed up.
I mean, I'm just so happy to be talking to you, and I'm so happy that people get to hear this, because waking up is where we have this kind of motto at WIT, because it's a talk that I gave years ago on being the victor in your life, not the victim. That's like our thing. And information empowers you to be the victor in your life, not the victim. That is not a political thing. That is a thing that we should all desire in our life. Information to help us make the best decisions to make sure that we are not a victim. And hearing how the sausage gets made and hearing who's all connected is so powerful and empowering. So it's not a political thing. It's ways that, especially for my young women that are listening, like Alex is educating you on things that you're not getting educated on in school. Or I mean, you probably know where I'm going to go. Do you know where I'm going to go?
Well, yes, but and I want to clarify too. I'm not doing the educating. I am interviewing people on my show every week. It's a different guest expert. They are the ones with the knowledge that are educating me and my audience at the same time. So I'm learning along with them. So I feel like I am not the expert on any of this, but the guests that I have on every week are.
Okay, I'll give you that, and I will say you have the classroom though. You are providing a classroom, a virtual classroom, you know, the podcast classroom, bringing in the people. And that's being an educator, because you are making that happen for people, and you're putting it out in ways that are digestible to many people, that the whole thing can just sound so overwhelming, like where to get started. So we're learning through you and with you, which is great. But do you know, I was going to bring up what you've been talking about for a while now on birth control, and what got you on that? What got you on the topic of addressing that issue?
All right. So I had been on birth control since I was 15, I mean, genuinely no reason. I don't even know why I was prescribed this. I wasn't having sex. It was just going in there and I think I just said something like, oh yeah, cramps are terrible. You know, I'd only had my period for two years at that point. It was like, they just said, should have said other things, but it was just like, oh, well, we can put you on birth control. I'm like, okay. You know, I didn't know anything. My mom didn't know anything. You know, we didn't know any better. And every one of my friends, none of us were having sex. And every single one of us was put on birth control, whether that was for acne, painful periods, just, or just nothing other than saying, this will balance your hormones. Well, that's BS. It doesn't balance your hormones. It jacks your hormones up. So that I was put on that at 15. In my late 20s, I decided to get off of it. And then I just started reading about how women are the most unhappy we've ever been. Our rates of anxiety and depression are going up, and how there were people that were raising the alarm on how this was connected to birth control, how all of us are on this prescription. And I've been off of it for a couple of years, but one talking about how the main side effects of birth control are depression and anxiety, and how then all of us are getting prescribed meds for anxiety and depression and all these things. And then also low sex drive. That's something I hear about all the time from my audience. Getting off of it and feeling like you just met yourself for the first time. Like your personality and your likes and your dislikes and your interests are completely different. People getting off, and there's multiple studies on this. People, you know, you can read about this anywhere. This isn't, people like try to say that this is all a conservative conspiracy theory just because conservatives are talking about it. That is so infuriating, because it was actually liberal feminists in the 1970s that first started talking about this. It was not conservatives. So I've got the Washington Post and MSNBC and ABC News and Media Matters all writing articles about me because I'm talking about it, and I happen to be openly conservative, saying this is a conservative conspiracy to get women off birth control and take away their right to abortion and, you know, do all this to control women. I'm like, bro, you need to go back and look at your history, because it was your side that first started this debate. So anyway, I'm looking at all of this stuff, and I'm blown away by these women saying, like, I got off birth control and I realized I wasn't attracted to my husband anymore. Like, I had gotten married on birth control, got off. It was because I wanted to have a baby. And then I was like, ew, who am I married to? I'm not attracted to him at all. And then working through that. This was something, it was popping up everywhere. And then all of these young millennial women saying things like, I'm starting to have a family for the first time. I feel like a different person now that I'm off of it. Just, has anyone else experienced these symptoms, these side effects? So I get curious. I have a girlfriend who was currently on it, and I said, "Hey, can you do me a favor? Can you bring me an insert for your birth control? Because when I was prescribed it, I never really looked at it, and I want to see it." Well, I briefly remember whenever I would take birth control, it was like this little square, about the size of a Post-it or whatever. But I'd never looked at it, right? It just stays in your little pill thing, and you don't take it out and look at it. She brings it in, and it is that little square, and then I realize, oh, this is like folded up. So I unfold this birth control insert. It's like the size of 6 full-size newspapers. And the print is so tiny, you can't even read it. It's like you have to have a or a magnifying glass to read all of these front to back, both sides. And it's like, it's wider than my arms can reach how big this insert is. None of us have ever been opening that up thinking we don't read the inserts on our prescriptions, right? We don't look at this. And so I just started researching more into this. I started reading all these books. I was listening to all these interviews with people that have sounded the alarm. I watched the Ricky Lake documentary, which definitely they are different political views than me, but they did a documentary called The Business of Birth Control. Shattered my worldview on this, shattered my worldview. And again, these are the topics that are bipartisan, that both women on the left and the right can agree. This is actually women's health. This is an actual women's health issue that we're all being gaslit in our 10-minute doctor's appointment, which, by the way, is not enough time to talk to you about getting on birth control and the side effects and the risks and, the cancer risks shooting up and all of these other things. That's not enough time. And to see if it's actually something you should be on, which I don't think any woman should be on it. But it's terrifying. And I realized that because my show primarily talks to young women, that this was such an important issue for me to talk to them about and warn them about what your doctors are not telling you. Because what they're doing is they get all these girls on birth control at 15, 14, 15, like me. Now some as young as 12, because now we're seeing puberty start as young as like 8, which is, I could talk about that, but you've got puberty starting earlier. So then you're prescribing birth control earlier. So then they're going to need the anxiety and depression meds. And then they're going to have all these fertility issues. They're going to need IVF. So now you've got them spending $20,000, $40,000 on IVF. You are medicalizing women from the start. This is the plan. This is not about doing what's best for women. This is how many patients can I see in a day? I have 5 to 10 minutes with them in a wellness checkup. I'm going to just prescribe them these things and look the other direction and never do any follow-up, things. And this is the other thing, is that the birth control masks actual root problems of what's going on. So your symptoms are subsided temporarily. And so you aren't looking into, well, what is causing my heavy periods? It could be endometriosis or PCOS or all these other things. What is causing this problem? You're not fixing it. So then these women are hiding the side effects, and then they're 28 years old, they get married, they want to have a baby, so they get off, and then they're realizing, oh my gosh, I have to go on this whole hormone journey, fertility journey, because now I have all these issues because my birth control was masking the signs. Your period is a vital sign as a woman to tell you if something is wrong with your body. And when you are on the pill, it creates a synthetic fake period. It's a withdrawal bleed. It's not a real period. So you are not able to assess your body as a woman and see, what is my body telling me? There's something not right. So I just found out that I have an autoimmune disorder. I have extremely heavy periods. That is a sign that I've got an autoimmune disorder, okay? If I would have still been on, and I noticed that. So I was able to tell my doctor, I was able to say to him, okay, tell me about your symptoms. One of them was extremely heavy periods, like running through tampons like crazy. I mean, TMI, but like just really heavy. And he was like, if you would have been on birth control, we wouldn't have known that. Like that, you wouldn't have had that sign to be able to tell me about. So I could, assess everything. So these are the things that birth control prevents that is so dangerous to women. And then, of course, everybody says, well, then how do you prevent pregnancy? I've never said that we need to outlaw or ban birth control. What I'm asking for is informed consent. So I want longer than a 10-minute wellness checkup so that your doctor can really go through every single one of these side effects with you. And then you can decide, yes or no, I want to take this pill. Then I want to make sure that you understand how to actually track your cycle, because there's only 5 days a month that you can get pregnant. So if you know your cycle and you're tracking your cycle and you know those days, you can pretty much right there avoid getting pregnant with the same rate as birth control, which is not 100%. So if you know how to do that and you also know the risks, how many women would actually choose hormonal birth control? I don't think a lot.
So why do you think people are able to see what happened with like big pharma when you watch all the documentaries now when they were with Oxycontin and everything like that, and people are able to go like, oh my gosh, like that was so bad, and they were overprescribing and people were making money off of that. And
that's what's happening with Ozempic right now, by the way.
Right, but there's been so many documentaries and movies and HBO series where people have been able to watch those documentaries, go out for drinks with their friends or hang out and be like, oh my gosh, outrage, outrage, outrage. How crazy that they did that to us. And yet can't see that it's happening again.
Because like I said earlier, it requires self-responsibility. Okay. I understand what they did. I watched Dope Sick. I understand the Oxycontin thing. But and that was just one thing. That was one blip. That was one thing they got wrong. But they have my best interest at heart, because if you were to consider the fact that they don't have your best interest at heart, what does that mean you're gonna have to change? Like me having to change my diet and all this stuff and give up, gluten and all these things that I love. Like, it sucks. It sucks. But it is important. And so people just don't want to take any self-responsibility.
Why? It's so empowering when we do.
It's lazy and it's the easy way out. But the thing is that it's only the easy way out for a little bit, because you're ignoring all of this stuff that is going to cause so many health problems down the road. So let me just tell you an example, and I won't say too much because it's just currently happening. But my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer a few weeks ago. My dad has a diet primarily of processed food. He, like my mom, and by the way, my mom's an amazing cook. My whole life, my mom made everything homemade, and she does make vegetables and all and other, things. But my dad will like eat the meat and then he'll pop a Stouffer's mac and cheese in the oven. He wants to run through a drive-through several times a day. When we took him home from the hospital after brain surgery, he literally made family members get him Pizza Hut and Chick-fil-A because he loves it and he's addicted to it. So my dad has pretty much eaten this entire life. Now he's had 2 heart attacks. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, so all these chronic diseases. And then now he just found out he has a brain tumor. My dad still refuses to make any lifestyle changes. That's it. The only thing I've been able to convince him to change is diet soda, which of course has aspartame in it, which is, they're saying, oh, there's no proof it causes brain tumors, but I mean, whatever. I don't trust them. So I've gotten him to at least trade that for Olipop, which is still like, it's still, none of it is great. Like just for that, that's the only thing. He will not change anything else. So it's like, this is what I mean. Like you could have people that are literally dying and they just don't want to do it. And it's, I don't know. It's, that's like that's a personal thing that I'm experiencing personally with my own family member, with my own dad. But you just have people that just don't want to hear it. And it's just frustrating because it just requires more of them and having to like think through this stuff. And I don't know. So that's like something that it's like, I wish I had that answer of like, why wouldn't he want to change this? But I don't know. He just doesn't.
Well, if something's an addiction.
Right. Oh yeah, totally an addiction.
So if something is an addiction, you think about what happens to our young kiddos at these schools with the school lunches and what they get addicted to eating starting there. And then you think about so many families that require food stamps, but you can still get certain types of foods on and beverages on food stamps that I personally don't think you should be able to get. I mean, but then I don't really like government getting involved in my life. And so I don't really want it in everybody else's life. But then I get frustrated when I think that soda is one of the biggest things that you can get when you can, utilize those food stamps. And I think about all these kiddos that are just drinking soda like it's water. And then of course they're going to gain weight. Of course they're going to be sick. And it's not the kid to blame. I mean, if that's what's been put in front of you and that's what's been told that you should have to eat, I always say, just ask yourself, who makes money off of you being depressed, sad, anxious? People make money off of you feeling that way. If you feel empowered, positive, healthy, good, who makes money off of that? you don't consume as much, you don't spend as much, you are satisfied with more simple things, more simple life when you're not in high anxiety. And then but people don't make money off of you in that way. So I try to put people back in your driver's seat by realizing that people make money off of us feeling discontent and unhealthy.
Yeah, it's very dark and it's very disturbing when you find it out. And so it can be overwhelming for people. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, it's so much information and it's, you dive in and you realize so much of what we know is a lie. I mean, even the food pyramid we grew up with in the 90s is a lie. And so it goes back that far. It's literally it was in our school textbooks on what we should eat, but they didn't realize that those little sections of the pyramid were bought by those industries, dairy, wheat, whatever. So when you find all that out, it's hard because you're like, if all of this is a lie, like what even has my life been, or what is my worldview? It's jarring, but it's so empowering when you realize that you are an autonomous person and you are not owned and controlled by the government. We don't have to let them control us in that way. And so whatever you believe about all these other things, I mean, when it comes to your health, don't let the government control this facet, because on the government's plan, it is a death plan. You will die.
I know. Think about all the people singing the songs, these women anthems about being independent. I'm like, well, be an independent thinker then. If like apply that independence to how you think and how you consume. I think that is probably the most empowering thing to do. And I'm somebody, I actually never have been on the pill. And guess what, everybody, you can make it. You can make it.
And I just want to say too, my whole podcast is not health and wellness. I do a lot of health and wellness episodes, but every week is vastly different. So I just have a different expert or person with a fascinating story that is helping us heal a sick culture. It just doesn't necessarily mean physically. That could be spiritually, mentally, emotionally. So healing a sick culture with, in a variety of ways. Every episode is totally different. So it's not all health and wellness if people are like, I'm not into that, but it's always different. So if you don't like one week, you'll like another.
Yeah. I mean, I actually didn't finish it because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. And this is what's making me laugh. I'm like, I don't know if I want to hear all this stuff about the Wi-Fi episode. Like I was almost like, it's too much. I'm like, oh gosh. Okay. And literally I'm like, my boyfriend's going to come home to like a house full of candles and he's going to be like, this is romantic. I'm like, maybe, but it's actually not about that. It's about making the day, like turning off the lights at the end of the day, putting on the candles, putting on the red, all these different things that you were talking about in that episode. So she's right. And that's good for our listener that is new to you, that it's not all about body health, her podcast, but it's something that I hear a lot of you, especially our young women, reach out to me about, and I want to kind of redirect you to the podcast to kind of get some more information. And again, just this wonderful and important reminder that taking care of yourself and being aware of what's happening around you is not political, it's empowering. And so open yourself up to hearing people from different sides of the aisle. What are your thoughts about being a role model?
Well, I certainly hope people don't consider me one.
Well, I know that they do. So
my thoughts on being a role model, one, I just hope you don't, but it's overwhelming. Yeah. It's overwhelming. I think about that a lot. I've been thinking about that a lot with Taylor Swift lately, in the pressure that I'm sure that she feels times 5,000 on a daily basis. It's just too much for one mortal person to bear. I mean, in my opinion, from a Christian faith-based perspective, that is really truly it's meant to be only Jesus. He's the only person that can handle that. It's just a human being can't handle it. I can't handle it. Like I hate knowing that, because I see every day how I fall short, and I always just am like, okay, so let me tell you an example. Sometimes I speak publicly or do events, and occasionally I will have somebody tell me that they drove. I mean, recently I had somebody drive like 5 hours to see me speak in person. Obviously I'm like touched, but also there's a part of me that thinks like, oh, I wish you wouldn't have done that, because I immediately feel like a huge weight to like, well, how will I ever be able to repay you? Like, why did you do that for me? Because now, like, to drive 5 hours to see somebody, like, well, now what am I going to do for you? Like, my speech has to be times, just, like, so incredible. Or if it's not, like, you're going to be like, why did I just waste my time? So it's just it's a pressure that I've put on myself. And I don't know, maybe other people, like public figures or podcasters or whatever, they don't feel that pressure, but I do. Like, so my background is radio, and that's how I started, and that's the medium that I love. Like, medium that I love is radio. Like, that's my first love. And if I could just be a voice and not be on camera and public speaking and all that, like, that would honestly, like, be my dream. I much prefer that. But this is all, especially working for Turning Point, they produced my podcast. Coming to work for this organization, I knew that was part of it. It was, they're going to require me to speak and go on the news and do all this. And that was a huge learning curve for me. And that was something uncomfortable professionally that I had to really, and still do work at. And I get very, very nervous public speaking, and I don't enjoy it. And I just have to psych myself up and get through it. And then as soon as it's over, I'm like, okay, we got that over with. But then I'm immediately thinking about the next year when I have to do it again. So, I don't know. That's hard for me. The pressure of being a role model. It's I don't like saying that I am one, because I don't think that I am one. And just, it's a huge weight on my shoulders knowing that people like analyze every move I make, every post that I make, what I use, what I buy, and then try to like do the same thing for them, and then maybe it won't work. Like in this podcast interview that I have coming out this week, I'm interviewing the person who's telling me about this autoimmune disorder that I have. And he's telling me like supplements and things that he would recommend for me. But he's like, I need to stress that, like, just because Alex is taking it doesn't mean that you should. You have to go do your own thing, because, they could go and buy all the same things and it makes them worse or whatever, because they don't know, they haven't tested their hormones and they don't know what they have going on. But it's like, so I always feel that way. I don't know. I always feel that way. Being under a microscope is a very difficult part of this job for me, but it's just part of it.
Yeah. It's interesting, as I definitely hear you saying, like, I don't like it. I don't want to be called that. I don't like it. And then you gave reasons why. And yet for me, I think one of the reasons why, at least what I've heard from people since I told them I was talking to you, is it was none of those things that they look up to you for, or that they admire you for. It was your openness, your vulnerability, your messiness that you share, like the journey. So sometimes I think that's what's resonant. That is what people are looking to. Not, are they perfect? Are they this? Are they that? Because for sure, if anyone's doing that, I mean, I've had people do that with me, and I'm like, well, no, thank you, hard pass. Because, and I'm not even trying to put that, that's not even part of who I am, trying to act like I have it figured out. That's other people's projection. But that's just the feedback that I got from people, was more that part of you is what makes you someone who people enjoy hearing from.
Thank you.
And I admire that in you very much. And I believe so will the people that are listening and watching. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And everybody who's watching, I hope that you go give Alex a follow. Can you tell them where they can find you, Alex?
You can find me on Instagram at Real Alex Clark, and subscribe on YouTube, Real Alex Clark. And then the Spillover, anywhere you get your podcasts.
All that will be in the show notes, information that you can find then. But thank you all for being here, and everybody keep doing whatever it takes.